Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christine Wamsler, and in the next 25 minutes, I will give you a small glimpse into my field of work, related science, and its application in practice. I have been working in the field of sustainability for around 25 years now, both in theory and in practice. And what might be good to know about Lund University, which is my workplace, is that it has recently been rated number 8 in the world out of more than 1,400 universities that were assessed in the World University Rankings on sustainability. Within Lund University, I work at Luxus, which stands for Lund University Center for Sustainability Studies, and which is said to be a world-class sustainability center for research, teaching, and impact. And it is also one of the founding organizations of the IDGs. In simple terms, my field of work, sustainability science, is about finding solutions to complex global challenges that threaten the existence of humanity and the planet. Examples of such challenges are climate change, biodiversity loss, disasters, mental health crisis, poverty, or war. The field thus focuses on existential threats and their inherent uncertainty. And our work is then about developing knowledge for guiding actions that allow us to meet our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainability science and practice is thus based on a very broad vision, which is summarized in the SDGs, the 17 development goals that world leaders agreed on in 2015 and that we committed to reach by 2030. It is about creating a world without poverty or hunger, where everyone enjoys good health and well-being, and where everyone lives in sustainable cities and communities. It is a beautiful vision, something that is definitively worth working for. And I believe that it is directly linked to the work of many of you. But unfortunately, our everyday life, our reality looks different. In fact, our society's trajectories remain deeply unsustainable. It is clear that our dominant sustainability approaches have not catalyzed the necessary change. One reason for this situation is that the vast majority of sustainability scholarship, education, practice has so far mainly focused on the external world, ecosystems, wider socioeconomic structures, and technology. In fact, sustainability challenges are generally framed as external threats or crises, and we therefore try to address them with external, primarily technical measures, simply because the way we define problems automatically determines our responses to them. A second aspect of reality has thus been vastly neglected: our inner lives and capacities. But what is changing the narrative now is that we are increasingly understanding that the threats and crises we are facing are, in fact, a reflection of an inner human crisis. But what does this mean, and how did we get there? It means that we are currently facing an interesting point in time. On the one hand, many of us are probably living the utopia of their grandparents. We should not forget all the positive things, how fortunate we are. Most of us are probably enjoying the privilege of a life with modern healthcare, democracy, and human rights. At the same time, the advancements that we are experiencing today also have a downside, or a kind of unintended side effect. We are seeing an ecological catastrophe together with a mental health crisis, poverty, and political turmoil. And this situation relates, amongst other things, to the fact that we are living in an increasingly complex, highly interdependent, and fast-paced world where threats in one area quickly become global threats, and we are experiencing exponential technological development with internet, social media, etc. The result is what we call a VUCA world. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It describes the situation of constant, unpredictable change that is now the norm in many industries and areas of today's world. And this situation also affects our personal lives, forcing us to constantly rush and to reorient or reinvent ourselves several times during our lifetime. It is very easy to be overwhelmed. But if we look deeper, we can see that the VUCA world and the increasing threats that we are facing are a reflection of an inner human crisis. They result from a kind of alienation, which is an integral element of modern life. They result from modern society's narrative of separation, which assumes that our thinking mind is separate from our feelings and bodily emotions, that we are all separate from each other, that some humans are superior to others, and that we humans are separate and superior to the rest of the natural world. We therefore call this inner crisis also a crisis of separation or a crisis of disconnection. And it manifests in our daily lives where we are relentlessly and increasingly exhausting and exploiting ourselves, others, and the planet. Sustainability is thus about our inner rather than our outer world. Gustav Speth, former chair of the United Nations Development Group, expressed this in the following way. I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. Or in other words, what we can see, the crises that define our world today are just like the tip of the iceberg that is visible to us. But around 90% is hidden. And these are our underlying patterns of behavior and associated structures, and importantly, our mindsets that are ultimately responsible for creating the crisis that we see today. So based on this understanding, the question therefore becomes how we can move from a situation where we are relentlessly and increasingly exhausting and exploiting ourselves, others, and the planet towards a more caring and thus sustainable society. And this requires us to ask and address existential questions, that is, questions about our identity, how we relate and are connected to ourselves, others, and the world around us. And in turn, this requires us to ask how we can unleash our inner potential to care and commit to affecting change for a better life, to support individual, collective, and planetary well-being. Over the past few years, I and other scholars have increasingly taken up these questions, and our work has led to the emergence of a new field of work. And this new field has different names, such as inner transformation for sustainability, or integrated inner-outer transformation, or existential sustainability. Related work supports new narratives and pathways that can better address the root causes of today's polycrisis, as summarized in this Imagine framework. It is about imagining new narratives and new pathways based on an in-depth understanding of the linkages between the mind and today's sustainability crisis, which is illustrated in this figure. And this figure shows the mind sustainability nexus, and that the mind can be seen as a victim of today's crisis, a barrier for adequate action to address these, and at the same time, a root cause of the many crises we see. The mind sustainability nexus also indicates that it is possible to move from this situation, the current vicious cycle of deteriorating personal and planetary well-being, to a virtuous cycle of personal and planetary flourishing. And it also points towards the inner qualities and capacities needed to support this change. These capacities and the way they influence sustainability outcomes have been identified in the so-called inner-outer transformation model. So this model identifies 5 clusters of so-called transformative capacities and explains how they affect our relationships to ourselves, others, and the world around us, which are expressed in our beliefs, values, and worldviews, and how this ultimately influences our choices and how we act in ways that can support transformation through the regeneration of human and planetary well-being. And the model also indicates the measures and activities that are needed to support transformative capacities. Now, this scholarly field of inner transformation has also been taken up in practice. And examples include, of course, the development and implementation of the so-called Inner Development Goals, the IDGs. I've been an official academic advisor from the very beginning. And as I mentioned before, Luxus is one of the founding organizations of the initiative. Now, the Inner Development Goals framework is not a scientific, but similar to the SDGs, a communication tool that aims to advocate for the role of transformative capacities for sustainability. It has already been adopted by several companies, governmental agencies, educational bodies, and even a country, which is Costa Rica. And the framework consists of 23 capacities that are clustered under the headings of being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting, and which is similar to the 5 clusters of the inner-outer transformation model. Now, in the context of the IDGs, I would like to highlight the importance of 3 related capacities. And these are mindfulness, compassion, and active hope. And later I will also refer to the aspect of art and creativity. So if we trace the roots of today's sustainability crisis through a culturally entrenched story of separation, as I explained before, we can clearly see the potential role of mindfulness, compassion, and hope. Because nurturing mindfulness and compassion entail an exploration of how we relate to ourselves, others, and the world at large in a reflective, meaningful, and responsible way. And this exploration nurtures and gives rise to what I call active hope, or a mature expression of hope, which I see as the aspiration to manifest our full potential, trust that this is possible, and an energy that is engaged in serving this unfolding for individual, collective, and planetary well-being. But nurturing certain transformative capacities, like compassion, is unfortunately not enough. As indicated by the inner-outer transformation model, transformation can only be achieved if we systematically support inner transformation across all sectors and scales, the individual, the collective, and the system level. So measures at individual and collective levels involve activities that can help us to tap into our inner potential, help us to discover our individual thinking and internalize cultural messages of separation, superiority, and instrumentalization, and develop alternative approaches and fields of change. This can take the form of creating related education, working environments, networks, art exhibitions, or festivals. Measures at the system level aim to systematically mainstream the consideration of inner dimensions and inner capacities into existing institutional and political systems. So it's about the institutionalization of integrated measures. It entails modifying organizations' vision statements, policies, regulations, working structures, tools for project management, resource allocation, communication, monitoring, evaluation, everything. And a concrete example would be that the development and use of technology is guided by intrinsic universal capacities and values like compassion as opposed to GDP. Or another example would be to change communication structures and mechanisms by moving away from the common meta message that support feelings of powerlessness and anxiety towards communicating a new theory of change that supports agency and hope. So importantly, from an ethical standpoint, it is crucial to highlight that the work across the presented three scales or levels, or the work with the IDGs, is not about saying we need to fix or change other people's beliefs, values, or worldviews, because this work would turn people into objects to be changed, rather than seeing them as change makers, as agents of change. It would just preserve business as usual through a dualistic, blaming, fixing it and fixing others mentality that reinforces current unsustainable paradigms. So instead, from a sustainability perspective, it is about creating measures, spaces, and conditions that can nurture a culture of inner development, mutual support, and engagement from a place of shared universal values and interconnection. And this will ultimately rattle unsustainable norms, cultures, and power structures. And art or creative visioning can play an important role in this context. Now, similar to Gustav Speth, my own story was that my many years of working in sustainability made me more and more aware of the fact that we are neglecting an important part of the story. So I was wondering, why is there no place for asking the essential, fundamental questions of life? So if sustainability is about the challenges that threaten the future of humanity and the planet, as I explained in the beginning, why is there no space for asking existential questions? And in search of finding new solutions, 90 years ago, I created the Contemplative Sustainable Futures program and embarked on a new journey in my life to look more deeply into the link between human inner development, culture, and systems change. And the first responses were blunt. This would be a career-ending move. And only later I did understand that these negative responses in form of resistance or ridicule or incomprehension lay at the very foundation of the question I was asking. Because I was challenging the very foundation people's lives and our institutions are built upon. And challenging current approaches to nurture a new normal that is a more sustainable narrative can feel threatening to people who want to preserve the status quo. But nonetheless, I continued setting up the program, and over the past 9 years, it has given me the opportunity to look and engage in inner-outer transformation in different ways in research, education, and practice. It also led to the fact that I've been an academic senior advisor for the IDGs, and at Lund University, we work today with integrating the inner development goals across different disciplines, departments, and levels. So first, we integrate the IDGs into various undergraduate and postgraduate courses. Some examples are the Sustainability and Inner Transformation course, the Psychology and Climate Change course, or the Living the Sustainability Idea track. Second, we also offer regular seminars to staff and students that relate to the IDGs, such as a workshop series on professional skills development for sustainable future, where the organizers draw much of their inspiration from the IDG toolbox. Third, the IDGs are included in some of our student career services, for instance, at the School of Economics and Management. Fourth, several of the university's faculties are also engaged in research projects that explore how inner transformative capacities, such as the IDGs, can be best integrated into education and research at all levels. Fifth, Lund University is financing various strategic collaborations that are related to the IDGs. And one example is the Existential Resilience Collaboration Initiative, which brings together a broad range of actors from within and beyond academia. Sixth, we also collaborate closely with the Lund Science Center, where we will, over the coming years, systematically integrate the IDGs into all internal and external operations and educational activities. And finally, there are other initiatives at the administration and policy level. Here, the focus is on discussions about how to integrate inner capacities, such as the IDGs, and develop new policies to improve the working environment of staff. So each year there are new initiatives, but we still have a long way to go before we will achieve any systematic integration and institutionalization of inner dimensions of sustainability. Beyond Lund University, our work, our research, and the models that I presented before have been taken up by many academic institutions, as well as other stakeholders, such as the IPCC or IPBES or the UNDP, and many other international, regional, and national organizations. Here you can see some related policy documents which we wrote for UNDP, the Mindfulness Initiative, the Inner Green Deal, and recently for the Club of Rome. And with this, I hope that I have given you a small glimpse into my world, my field of inner transformation for sustainability and the IDGs. And if you want to read more about related science and the mentioned models, you can find them here on our website. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to joint collaborations and work in this field. Thank you.